Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Chelsea McPhee,
And I'm Kathleen Mather.
and we're with NL Support, and we're here to talk to you about the unit and our Patient Advisory Council that some of you might be interested in joining. This is just a map because NL Support is actually part of a network of 11 SPOR support units across Canada that are funded by the Canadian Institutes for Health Research, or CIHR, and we're housed in the Faculty of Medicine at Memorial University. We have several partners, including the two research programs, Quality of Care NL and Choosing Wisely NL. We also partner with the Center for Health Informatics and Analytics. We work closely with the Primary Healthcare Research Unit, the Newfoundland and Labrador Center for Health Information, the provincial government, among others. And really the goal of all of these SPOR support units across Canada is to build capacity for and to support patient-oriented research. But what is patient-oriented research? Well, it's research that focuses on patient-identified priorities, engages patients as partners, and improves patient outcomes. Essentially, it's research where patients aren't just research subjects, but they're engaged throughout the research process to help guide and develop the research using their lived experience of the healthcare system.
So this type of research also aims to improve the impact of the research for the people that it will affect. So it works as well to decrease the length of time it takes for research to go from results to influence in practice. And we can also help this along by including other relevant stakeholders, so people like policymakers and clinicians, as part of the research team. And that whole process is referred to as integrated knowledge translation.
So we keep using this word patient, and that's just the term that's preferred by CIHR, but really it's probably a lot broader than how you're imagining it. A patient is actually anyone with lived experience of the healthcare system, or the family, informal caregiver, or friend of someone with lived experience of the healthcare system. And you'll also maybe hear us say the word patient partner or the words patient partner, and this just means someone with lived experience of the healthcare system who partners in some way in research with a research team. So as I mentioned, at NL Support, we have a wonderful Patient Advisory Council, or PAC, as I'll probably refer to them. And the people with lived experience of the healthcare system who sit on this council do things like review research priorities and advise on the prioritization of health research topics. They advise on how to involve patients and the community in research and priority setting. They identify training needs for members of that council, for other patient partners and research groups, among many other things. This group meets quarterly, and they sometimes meet in between to work on special initiatives, or if there's an opportunity that comes through the email chain. They also sit on some other governance committees for NL Support or Quality of Care, and there's also a lot of other external opportunities that are circulated through this group, including opportunities to network nationally with some of those other groups that I mentioned in that SPOR network.
And so we wanted to just give you some ideas of some of the activities that our patient partners have been involved in. So some participate as members of research teams. So this picture here is one of our patient partners at a government funding announcement for a project that she's part of. So their project received almost $5 million in a grant to continue their research on the movement and management of patients in emergency rooms in Newfoundland and Labrador. And in this picture, PAC members are involved in opportunities with some of our external partners, like Chelsea mentioned. So this is from a strategic planning day with, we call it NILG. So that's our Provincial Center for Health Information. And we also encourage our patient partners to participate in events for the public because they can really provide that sort of public perspective. So here we have a patient who was part of a panel discussion during a public forum on provincial antibiotics usage. And this is the flyer for it was a really exciting project. This was an innovative research product that patients were involved in. So the research team was studying breast cancer surgical choices, and they developed a theatrical production to help present their findings. So patient partners were involved in both the development of the theatrical process, and some of them even acted in the play.
Yeah, it was really, really neat, actually. Really impactful. So here you'll see on the left a poster, and then on the right a video, which unfortunately I don't think we have time to show you, but I'll just explain to you the significance of this. So in terms of the poster, the Patient Advisory Council would be consulted about the language, messaging, and images used in public campaign posters like the one that you see here. They also help define the audience for these materials and provide suggestions on where to actually post them, so where people are going to see them best. Choosing Wisely, Newfoundland and Labrador does an annual public campaign to reduce inappropriate antibiotic use. So a couple of years ago, the PAC chose the direction of the video that was created for the campaign, and that's the screenshot you see there on the right. So they felt that previous messages used to discourage the misuse of antibiotics weren't actually hard-hitting enough. So when they were presented with 3 draft video scripts, they chose the one that was really hard-hitting. And one of the members sort of jokingly suggested that infamous radio host Patty Daly be involved in the video in some way, and we thought that was pretty funny, and we kind of laughed about it. But actually, it turned out that somebody on the Choosing Wisely NL Communications Committee actually knew Patty Daly, and they called in a favor, and he actually became involved in the video and shot it from his sound booth at the radio station. So just a couple of examples of some of the work that the Patient Advisory Council have been involved in the past. I know it's not a lot to go on, but if anyone has any questions now, we're happy to answer them. And of course, if any of you feel like you do have that lived experience of the healthcare system, either personally or as a family, friend, or caregiver, and are interested in joining a patient advisory council or learning more about what that actually means and what the commitment means for you, you can always email us, and we're happy to answer any questions you have. And also throughout your education, if you have any research support needs that are relevant to health research in Newfoundland, we're also happy to do that. So.
Wonderful. Thank you both for sharing. So we do have a question from our folks attending here. What's the time commitment for the PAC?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I mentioned that they meet quarterly. The meetings are usually 2 full-day meetings and 2 half-day meetings. So that means, like, for the full day, it's usually 9 to 3 or 2:30-ish, and half-day to about lunchtime. Of course, now with COVID, things have changed a little bit, and our meetings seem to be longer for whatever reason. But essentially, attending those quarterly meetings is sort of the bare minimum you can do, and that's fine if that's what you're there to do. But there are so many other opportunities. So the time commitment is really what you make it. It's what you have time for. So beyond those quarterly meetings, you kind of just say yes to what you can and what you're interested in becoming involved in.
Wonderful, thank you. And is there sort of any registration or application process required? Like, what does that look like? Like, how do folks become volunteers?
For sure. So if you are interested in learning more or may be interested in joining the Patient Advisory Council, what you would do is you would email me. So my email, I'm Chelsea again, so my email is there on the screen. And then we have a little bit of an interview to see if the fit is right. Because as I mentioned, we are looking for, a specific type of volunteer. And then if so, we go from there. There's a bit of an orientation, of course. So the group runs on a terms of reference and has a mandate, and there's probably a bit of a learning curve, but you'll be set up with a buddy who's on the council who can also help you navigate that process.
Wonderful. And is there any sort of time estimate from when a student would submit their application and actually begin volunteering, or is that kind of subject to change based on the situation?
Yeah, it's pretty organic, depending on that student's needs or wants, and again, whether the fit is right for them.
Wonderful. So we do have another question here from the audience. So can I volunteer as a first-year student with no research background? And what would a day look like volunteering with you folks?
Yeah, excellent question. Actually, we maybe prefer that you have no research background. It's really not a requirement. The only requirement is that you have some lived experience of the healthcare system. So a day volunteering for us looks different depending on what opportunities you choose to become involved in. But let's say you just do the typical quarterly meetings. In between those, you may get some emails with other opportunities or with an ask to provide feedback about a piece of research or a campaign. And then during the meetings, we have a pretty packed agenda. Sometimes we get presentations about different health research that's happening in the province. Often those researchers are looking for feedback about a piece of their research. So you might comment on their research question, whether that actually makes sense for someone with lived experience in the healthcare system, or whether it's too sort of scientific, because the goal of patient-oriented research, as Kathleen mentioned, is really to shorten that gap between research and implementation. And the way that we think is the best to do that is by making sure that the research makes sense and addresses actual patient needs. So, and yeah, it's really just a great network of people to become involved with. But as I said, an actual day in the life of really depends on how much you're involved in.
I was going to say too, another example of things that a number of patients are involved in is we have a variety of committees as part of our unit. And so those committees each meet monthly. So if you volunteer to say be on one of those committees, you might be part of a monthly committee meeting, and then you would kind of get to decide the direction, say, of our training sort of arm or something like that. So there's kind of, like Chelsea said, there's so many different ways. It's hard to say what a typical day would look like.
That's a good point, Kathleen. And those meetings are an hour long, and the committees focus on things like training, as Kathleen mentioned, on patient engagement. So just broader in the research sense, and also in terms of this council, how does that actually work logistically? They focus on data management, so that's really more research based, and on implementation. So those would be the public campaigns.
Wonderful. So would you say there's a minimum amount that folks have to volunteer, or is it genuinely self-directed?
Well, we do offer an honorarium. So if you accept the honorarium, there are minimum amounts that minimum like hourly amounts that you have to meet in order to qualify. And again, if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share. We have it's called our appreciation policy. So I'm happy to share that appreciation policy with anyone who's interested. But essentially, this really isn't an opportunity for someone who wants to put in the bare minimum. I don't think it is a little bit involved, I have to say. And we are looking for someone who is willing to give that good feedback and really take the time to learn about the different initiatives that are put forth to them and to provide feedback about them.
Yeah, I would add to that there is a little bit of a learning curve. There's a lot of different, terms and things that have been kind of going on for a little while. So certainly, I would say there's a bit of time at the front to sort of get your feet wet and feel like you understand. So just, not that you aren't following along if you join and you're struggling a little bit. It's a lot to kind of pick up initially, but I hope that the team is very supportive and happy to help anybody along with that.
For sure. Yeah, there's a lot of support provided as long as you ask for it. And that buddy, I think, is also pretty invaluable because, as I mentioned, anyone who is a new recruit to this council gets paired with someone who's been there for a little bit, who can sort of help them navigate those terms and the waters.
Wonderful, thank you. So we do have another question here. Is there a need for immigrant/new Canadian perspective on your team?
Absolutely. We're always looking for to include more diverse perspectives on our committee. As you can imagine, we have a lot of retired people on the council because people who are retired just generally have more time to volunteer for things like this. So that's a great perspective to have, as Newfoundland has an aging population, but of course it's only one perspective, and we really strive to diversify that perspective to include newcomers and Indigenous peoples and people from across the province, which we do have a good representation across the province generally, but it is always a struggle to ensure diversity.
Yeah, because we really want to have, ideally we would want our council to represent the population of Newfoundland and Labrador. So yeah, we want all the different perspectives so that we can have those shared when we ask our questions.
You know, if we're supporting health research and we want the health research to be relevant to the people of Newfoundland and Labrador, then the people on our council have to represent the people of Newfoundland and Labrador.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Well, we have 2 minutes left, so I'll throw it back to the audience to see if anyone else has any questions. But before we conclude, is there anything else that you folks would like to add?
Just that, well, no, pre-COVID times, our doors are always open, and now our emails are always open. So, you know, if you do have any questions, please, you know, no questions too small. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
I was realizing too, we also potentially should have put our website on here. You can get a little, it's nlsupport.ca, and you can get a little bit more information about the different things. Thank you, Lindsay. That we are involved in from the research side. So if you needed a bit of research support, you can get a little bit more information, and you can find our emails on there if you lose them as well.
Really good point, Kathleen. And there's a link to sign up for our newsletter if you are curious about staying up to date about some of the things we're involved in and some of the free training that we offer. And that training is for anyone. So it is usually around research, but anyone's welcome to register for it.
Awesome. And is there a deadline to apply, or is this always ongoing?
No, it's ongoing.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining here today. I don't see any more questions, so I think everyone's got the answers that they needed. But thank you both so much for joining us. We really appreciated it. And hopefully you'll be hearing from some students soon.
Great. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you.
It was nice to chat with you.
You as well.